Hello, welcome to Global Business. I am Imewa Yohimakai. Today on the program, we shall be going political. Yes, looking at the economy of politics and the politics of the economy. Confusing, isn't it? Anyway, what we're looking at are presidential candidates and the economic blueprint for Nigeria. Everyone has been talking the politics. No one is talking the economy. And the economy are the issues for Nigeria. And so we'll start with someone who was a regular in this program but has now moved up to the political space. So sit back, relax, and in fact, take jottings because you might make your choice. The Nigerian political space has been opened up. We have businessmen, technocrats, economists, all kinds of people coming into the political space. And they are not just gunning for councillorship. They are not just gunning for local government chairmen. Some of them are gunning for governorship and presidential elections. And so that's very commendable, in fact. And so we told you that we'll be looking at political parties and especially the economic blueprint for the country. And more so than to do that with someone who practically started global business with us. We've had him on this program countless times. And it would be a disservice to us and to him if we do not start with him as he debuts with this section of our season on the program, looking at the economic blueprint of aspirants or candidates. He is a candidate of the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party. We know him as Tope Fasua, but well, for the presidential campaign, he's better known as Tope Fasua, and he is gunning for the presidency, Nigeria's president. And we're looking at his economic blueprint for the country. Tope, welcome to Global Business.
Thanks
again.
Thanks very much.
The economy may be wide. I mean, looking at the economy, may look at it as very wide. So let's start with, what's your vision for Nigeria's economy in your tenure as president?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. In a nutshell, I mean, it's what I've also always talked about and thought about as well. So I'm thinking that in 4 years, we should be able to double our GDP from the current, give or take, about $350 billion to about $700 billion. And in another 8 years, we should be able to take that beyond $1 trillion. That's one, and of course, in terms of per capita also, we're talking of doubling the per capita from about $2,300, $2,500 to at least $5,000, that's clearly what we can do. And of course, in doing that, I'm proposing a growth of about between 15 to 20% for the GDP year on year from the point I become president. And I think that's very, very doable because what we have right now is just mediocrity. We're running at about 1.5% GDP growth per annum, but our population is growing at about 3.5% per annum, which means we're in negative growth territory. And of course, you can hear as the National Bureau for Statistics has said that even we're in a very fragile recovery. In fact, it could be said that we're still in recession somehow. Especially if you look at the growth in population. And then when you look at the other indices as well, we're running interest rate levels at around, we look at what the lending rates at about 25% to 30%, and then we're looking at inflation, which is down to 11%, but we used to be around 20%, but even at 11%, that's a lot, it's a lot given the growth rate that we're achieving now. And what my message to the entrepreneurs, and I'm coming to the public service as well, but my message to the entrepreneurs is that for Nigerian entrepreneurs, especially our young people, they should always look at solving problems. If you look at the top 6 largest companies in the world today, which most of them are tech-based companies, and they are companies that were created to solve problems. Talking about the Microsoft of this world, the Google, the Amazon, the Facebook, and all that. These boys actually set out trying to solve a problem. For example, Google, the problem of, you want information in a jiffy about anything. And so what it did was to find a way of populating a certain database with as much information as possible, such that if you Googled it, you find the information. Of course, at some point in time, they got assistance from their problem, from the government, So in a place like Nigeria, given that we have a lot of problems, I'm encouraging the youth to actually wake up daily and think in terms of how do we solve this problem. Don't think about the money will come. But of course, government must also be responsible to the level of assisting them with the back end, with the backup that they need. For example, Google will not be where it is today if the US government did not actually stand up to assist it. Facebook will be nobody today except the US government stood up to assist them. If we could establish the minimum standard of living for our people and say that if you're in Nigeria, no matter where you may live, whether in the urban area or in the rural area, there's a certain minimum standard of living that you must achieve. Then we'll see where the jobs are. When we say there's no work, think about the villages. We have left them totally on their own. No lights, no water, no road work, no government presence, no nothing. And so I believe that that's opportunity for employment. They need teachers there, they need doctors, they need nurses. Those are jobs that we can. They need even simple things like a mobilization officer. It used to be like that in the MAMSA days. A mobilization officer, someone who goes in there to tell them about what the government is doing and encourage them. Sometimes some of the anger of people from those areas is because they don't see anything at all.
In looking at it, these promises seem very lofty, very wide, and a lot of politicians come up with such promises. Probably not the same kind of promises, but they come up with promises and they don't end up fulfilling them. Okay, let's look at it. Have you put into consideration the legislature, governors, the fact that states are entities of their own? Have you put into consideration all these other bottlenecks that may stop your economic programs?
I put this together in a kind of manual, and I think I'm perhaps the only aspirant that has done that up till now. Part of what I'm proposing is, for example, a rejig of the allocation formula. Presently, we have something like 52% for federal, some 4% or 2% is for, what they call all this other statutory stuff that they do. Then 26% goes to state and 20% goes to the local government. Now, the present scenario is that the 20% and the 26% for the states are paid to the state governors directly. And it is what they call the joint account. And then, however, what we have seen is that the state governors are basically sitting on the local government. You see, as much as, whatever is in the constitution, we should also understand that as much as the states are blaming the federal for grabbing too much power, they too seem to have grabbed too much power, because from the moment that they started with this idea of joint accounts and they collect everything that's supposed to go to states, to local government, the local governments have been dying. And that's the truth, There are many local governments that see nothing from government these days. The local government chairmen are appointed by the governors in all of the states. Even when they conduct elections, the ruling party wins almost everything down to the councillors and so on. And that means that they brook no opposition as state governors. So, however, what I'm proposing is the federal government clearly can do with a lot less. All right, because we can see, maintaining a large, if you like, quote and unquote, even though I don't believe Nigeria civil service is large, but the number of people who sit in cities, in federal secretariat or state secretariat, there are too many. And they are pushing papers up and down. You need those people in the villages. What we need to do, rather than laying people off, they need to go back to the villages and the smaller towns to show government presence, not to stay in headquarters or in the state headquarters or federal headquarters and be pushing papers. So we can do, what we can do is 25% is enough for federal level. All right, and then the 26% that the states get now can be increased to 35%. However, the 20% that the local governments get right now, the 20% should be doubled to 40%. You see that's 100%. I'm talking about federal allocation. All the monies that accrue into the federation account should be split in that ratio. What this does is that it puts more attention and more focus and more responsibility on the local government. And however, because the states are sitting on that right now, I'm proposing a joint committee or a joint arrangement of management of federal, state, and local government to manage this money at the local level. The challenge with putting so much money at the local level is, what do they do with it? They're supposed to be small thinkers. And the federal government has been sitting on this money because the federal government believes that we are the big thinkers. We're the ones thinking about the trunk road that runs through all the country. the entire country. How do you get small local governments to cooperate? That's why the money must still go to the local level, but must be jointly managed. I believe that the states should be happy with an arrangement where they're getting almost 10% more than they used to get before, and that they also still have a stake in administering the 40% that will go to the local government. And I believe that the federal government can do a lot less. For example, there are many ministries that you don't even at the federal level. For example, Ministry of Agric. What do you need Ministry of Agric? You'll be shocked that they do very little in the Ministry of Agric. What do you need them for at the federal level? You need them at the local level. We need a scenario where the Ministry of Agric at the local level will be liaising between our universities, our polytechnics, departments of agric and agronomy, agric economics, agric extension, and be feeding directly to the villages and the farmers who need help. We have left them for too long. For example, another problem with the local government, local level and the rural level is I realize that we need right now something beyond urban renewal. We need rural renewal. Since the independence of this country, independence in 1960, this country has never had any plans for the housing of our people in the village. If a man lives in the village, all right, we think that they are stupid for living in the village. But if they live in the village, when they come of age and they need to have a roof on their head and their families, what they do is they go and look for mud, and then they start to build these houses. There's no housing code. Nobody assists them to say this is how you should build it. They don't know anything about ventilation. Absolutely, there's no even things like sanitary issues in there. They just build the house. All right, and then the houses are very fragile. At this age, 2018, and as a country, we're being judged by how those people live. When people come here, when you say CNN or whatever comes here, you expect them to come to Maitama or to go to Banana Island. No, they don't. They go to that village and so this is how Nigerians are living. So it's left to us to ensure that Nigerians stop living in that manner. So there's a lot we can do. If we focus on rural renewal and we focus on what prototype kind of building should our rural people be living in, all right, and we assist them. Even there's nothing. Look, the closest we got to low-income housing was Jakonde houses, and of course, two-bedroom, three-bedroom houses are for actually people who live in the cities. We have had no plans, and so what has happened is that we have shrunk our economy to cities only.
So what would be your thrust for the economy?
Well, I have a private sector background, and we don't think in terms of 4 years being too small. There's a lot you can achieve. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking one of the things we can achieve, what actually holds people down in government is usually what they call this entrenched interest. People, you want to do something good and there's one big man there and one other man there.
And there is bureaucracy.
And of course there's bureaucracy, but you see, you can actually torpedo the bureaucracy. Like I said now, okay, fine, don't lay people off. For example, if you want to lay people off, you're going to have a problem with the unions.
Yes.
But if you say, listen, now what we're going to do is recalibrate this bureaucracy and we need people who are ready to work, give them an option. So communication is actually 95% of the work of leadership right now. For example, that same bureaucracy you mentioned about now, we have been battling with the problem of ghost workers forever. Even former IG Mike Okiro, when he was Police Service Commission chairman, said there were about 80,000 ghost policemen, even in 2018, before he left. The 80,000 ghost police, and the remaining real policemen, right? Half of them are carrying bags for big men and all of that. So you can see that's the same bureaucracy we're talking about. So there's a lot of slack within the bureaucracy that you can take care of. And in fact, we're talking about even expanding that bureaucracy. For example, now the percentage of workers, of the workforce in Nigeria that works for government is about 3 to 4% maximum. Think about it. Only 4 out of 100 workers work for government in Nigeria. The rest of the people who can work, a lot of people are underemployed. Many people are pushing carts up and down. People wake up and go and sort themselves out, doing whatever it is they can do. That's the economy we run right now. But 3-4% of the workforce is working for government in Nigeria. If you went to Europe, where we got all this democracy and development from, the average in Europe is about 25% of workers are working for government. So many times they come here and tell us, go and sack your workers, which is very bad advice. I met someone who was in the House of Reps who told me that Clinton advised them to sack a lot of workers in 2003. The point is, we don't have enough people working in government in Nigeria. Because those who work for government are the ones that are going to provide the public service.
Even though those people that work for government take a large chunk of what?
No, exactly. You see, according to the Adamu Fika report in 2010, and a few other reports like that, they have shown that, look, the real problem is that the service is top heavy. that there's this 18,000 people, according to the FICA report, who take 25% of the budget. As at that time, the budget was about 4 trillion naira. And these 18,000 people, they took 1.13 trillion out of that money. And not only that, you know, their real emolument was 95 billion. All right, that was the allowances was 95 billion. But the remaining almost 1 trillion naira was on appurtenances of office, cars, houses, stuff that they do for themselves, foreign travel, foreign medicals. So, and nothing has happened. That hasn't changed up to now as I speak to you. In fact, it has got worse in some ways, you know. So I believe that we can do that. Number one, communication is key. Let people know where you're coming from. Sell your dreams to them. Keep talking. Power of repetition. Okay, luckily I'm already running a political party now. I'm beginning to get an idea of how Nigerians think and the challenges you'd have, even sometimes when you think you have some of the best ideas. If you don't keep selling to them, sometimes you have to beg them, you have to cajole them, you have to quarrel with them, you have to start all over again and repeat the same process.
Let's take a look at a very controversial issue, current issue going on now. What's your view on China loans?
My view is, number one, to say that this whole idea whereby governments believe that borrowing is a first line of revenue. Sometimes we're beginning to confuse borrowing with revenue. When you're borrowing, you are borrowing. It's not your money. It needs to be repaid. There's a quotation from Mahathir Mohamad, which I shared recently, you know, which said about like countries should always think about repayment. And Nigeria is taking a lot of loans that it seems that we don't intend to repay. We took $150 million for polio eradication recently. We took $55 million from Hungary for documentation, research on water. We took $475 million from France. And now we've gone to take $326 million from China. So that the point is that the first thing is that we should understand that this debt culture we're building is going to run us into crisis. Whether it's from China, it's from Europe, from America, from IMF, from multilateral agencies, from anywhere. A lot of things that are social services should be funded with internally generated money.
So are you not scared of being president with all these on ground?
No. We need to stop. Look, if people like me don't get into that spot right now, we're going to continue to borrow, and already we have borrowed into the next 30 years. There are 30-year loans that this present Minister of Finance has secured for us. It seems like he's there simply to collect loans on behalf of Nigeria. And the reason why we're talking about 1.5% recovery is because of some of these loans are creating the illusion of liquidity. That creating an illusion that there's money. All right, between the loans and the recovered crude oil is $78 today as I speak to you. And all we can manage is 1.5% growth. This country should be growing at double the pace, at double digits as we speak right now. So I'm not afraid. We need someone to come and step up. Because listen, like, as you know, I've come on your show several times. I've written about it, whether in columns, whether in books. I've presented it to them. We've shouted hoarse. That's the reason why it seems like some of us professionals are stepping up now and saying, enough already. If you are running the economy and managing the economy in a way that's going to put everybody in trouble, some of these guys will be dead and gone by the time this trouble comes. I remember what it took us to get out of the debt trap in 2006. As a matter of fact, a country that has not had a good record of managing its finances and managing debt should be very wary of going into such debt. In that time, Obasanjo used to say, oh, we borrowed $12 billion. That was what we borrowed. We paid $38 billion in terms of cash flow, but we were still owing $35 billion. And $30 billion was to the Paris Club, $5 billion was to the London Club. The Paris Club are the fixed rate interest loans. The London Club are variable rates tied to the LIBOR. And so we managed to strike a deal by giving $12 billion additionally to the Paris Club, and the rate at that time was 120 the dollar, 1.4 trillion went to them, you know, and then they wrote off $18 billion. You know, mind you, we are talking of $35 billion then. $35 billion was our loan then. We were in a trap, and we were using more than 70% of our revenue to service the loans, just to service, not to repay. Today, Emmanuel, we are back to almost $65 billion loan. And we can't actually tell what cash flow thing it is we use that loan to finance. If we couldn't get out of 35 billion loan, can we get out of a 65 billion loan debt portfolio? I doubt. We can. So these guys don't intend to pay these loans. You know, and I'm proposing that we shouldn't be collecting loans except we can see the cash flow. All right. we should only collect loans for projects that are self-funding to a large extent. If we're collecting loans, for example, rail sector, I don't mind, so long as you're going to manage it very professionally and collect your fees. If you are taking loans from, let's say, the power sector, where people will pay in order to access, why not? But we're borrowing things for water, for polio. How much money will people in Kano or wherever pay to drink water from government that you get the money to repay? So all those long, short kind of loans, let's use it to reflate the economy so that there'll be more activity. When people don't even want to pay your taxes because they don't trust the government. They don't trust the government because the government hasn't shown enough example to be trusted. And so we still have one of the lowest, rates of tax efficiency in the world. And aside from that, I always tell people we're not supposed to be looking at only taxes. We blindside ourselves sometimes. We should be looking at everything that's due to government: taxes, rates, fees, fines, duties, and all the works.
Sorry. Now, how would your government assist MSMEs?
Absolutely. Well, when you talk about 15% GDP growth rate, that's a lot of work for MSMEs. You see, let me tell you, the point is, the issue with MSMEs is not about even giving the loans. It's about giving, number one, getting the ideas about what to do and encouraging them. And look, I mentioned the fact, if the US government hadn't assisted Google or your Facebook or all those guys, they'll probably still be MSMEs as we speak. All right. Of course, MSMEs are defined as any organization where their turnover is 500 million and below, which is a lot of money, though. You understand what I'm saying? But look, 15% GDP growth that I'm thinking about is a lot of work, a lot of productivity for everybody. The most important thing for the MSMEs is the ability for people to have money to buy that which they produce. It's not just to push them in and say, go and start entrepreneurship. A lot of people who talk of entrepreneurship in Nigeria, in government, have never done anything entrepreneurial on their own. So so the bottom line is, when people start businesses, are there people who are off-takers from them? If we sit here a little bit longer, you see boys will come in here, with the CDs that they've made, like, for example, music CDs, and they're telling you, oh, God, at all, and winch. You know what I mean? Give them 200 naira to sell. For how long can they sustain that? So there's a lot of work for MSMEs in this country. Again, I'm going to urge them, number one, do your MSME. Think about solving problems in your locality. Your money will come. Think about solving problems for Nigeria. Think about solving problems for Africa. Think about solving problems for the world, and you're going to get there. So that's where the opportunities are.
Finally, I'm going to come to my question that I asked before. What particular thrust would you look at in the economy? What are the thrusts? In 1 minute.
I believe that the educational sector has a lot of solutions for a lot of our problems. As a matter of fact, I believe that the educational sector should not be playing the victim, but should be playing the solution provider kind of approach. I believe in the systems approach, to the extent that every 1 naira should have the power of an atom, atomic explosion, by rechanneling each dollar into the economy to produce value. So therefore, if you are investing in the educational sector, it's with a view to educational sector solving problem in the energy sector, solving problem in infrastructure, solving problem in agric. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not going to be saying, I'm not one of those say, oh, I'm going to be spending so much money on power. No, I'm going to spend money on education to solve the problem with power. And so that's the way to look at it. So my approach is very, very systemic in nature. With the rising tide, a lot of boats can rise. And that's
Thank
my
you
view.
very much, Tope Fasua,
You're welcome.
who is the candidate of the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party.
Thank you very much.
On Friday, September 15th, 2018, history was made in Nigeria as its finance minister, Kemi Adeosun, became the first minister to resign on account of irregularities of her NYSC discharge certificate. 69 days after a media outfit, Premium Times, came up with a report that Adeosun may have forged her NYSC exemption certificate, she agreed and resigned. President Muhammadu Buhari has accepted that resignation. Now, let's take a look at some of the achievements of Kemi Adeosun while in office. She created an efficiency unit, and the unit has allegedly saved the country the sum of 15 billion naira. Under her purview, the Voluntary Assets Income Declaration Scheme, VAIDS, was introduced, And this has already earned the government over 180 million naira and given jobs to over 2,190 community tax liaison officers. Though the Development Bank of Nigeria was birthed at the tail end of the Goodluck Jonathan administration under Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, life was breathed into it under Adeosun when the Central Bank of Nigeria gave it its operating license. The Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, is for MSMEs and has created a credit line of 5 billion naira already. Kemi Adeosun is also reputed to have started the whistleblower policy, which may have its downsides, but has also earned the government over 527 billion naira. She continued in the stead of the former Minister of Finance on the IPSIS platform and, of course, very well implemented the Treasury Single Account or Single Treasury Account, as it's called some places. Perhaps one of the happiest people on the outcome of the Adeosun Gate is Monet Guazo, former Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. This controversial Guazo was suspended by Adeosun over irregularities in the Securities and Exchange Commission. She came under strong attack by both legislators and loyalists to Guazo as she refused to budge. They even accused her of trying to cover up for Owando. Now, who is replacing Kemi Adeosun? Zainab Shamsuna Ahmed, who was the Minister of State for National Planning, has been told to oversee the Ministry of Finance. You have listened to Tope Fasua. Now, what's your own judgment? Are you a candidate or a presidential candidate? You may want to come tell us about your economic blueprint. Just call the numbers on the screen. It's 070-1061-2949. Call us and tell us that you are interested in telling Nigerians your economic blueprint. We have been at the Acropolis right here in Abuja. Thank you for hosting us. Remember, Nigerians are watching. Come tell us your economic blueprint. I am Imewayo Hiomokai, and it's always nice doing business with you.